Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final day here at Smart City Expo World Congress. Firstly, congratulations. You've made it to the first session of the final day. That's quite a feat. We've got a brilliant day ahead full of keynotes, plenary sessions, and then later on this afternoon, we have a dialogue between representatives from Barcelona and New York. Please make sure you tweet throughout the event. We have been trending over the past couple of days. The hashtag is SCEWC17. And also a reminder that there are translator headsets if you'd like them. They're just outside to the right. So we're going to kick off our final day with an inspirational talk. Gilles Babinet is the digital champion of France at the European Commission. He works to push innovation through education and is a multi-entrepreneur, having set up 9 companies. Today, he's going to talk about how you can better understand social demographics, promote enablers, and find new ways of interacting with millennials. At the end of his talk, we will be having a Q&A, so if you'd like to submit any questions via the app, just click through to the Ask and Vote section, or we can take them from the floor. Okay, please give a very warm round of applause to Gilles Babinet.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. So you understood that I'm partially working at the European Commission. And on top of that, I was mostly an entrepreneur. I've been working with startups for 25 years. And more recently, over the past 7 years, I've been trying to understand what are the drivers of innovation. I've been working with 120 different types of organization, whether it's corporation, state, maybe Meyer House, and trying to see what would be the driver for this organization for creating innovation. And I think that regarding the cities, the challenge is huge. I mean, what we see as innovation so far is mostly technology. And we probably need to take some distance with this vision. If you type smart city on Google, this is the type of image you most likely to find. You have plenty of these images. It's not really appealing, so to say, in terms of vision for the future of our cities. And if you go with people who are in charge of governing cities, you know, normal people, average people, you would be really surprised to discover that they see the mission as bringing, like, I would say, I'm a little bit sorry to say that, but a lot of real estate. You know, you believe that if you build a new tower, a new school, a new hospital, whatever, you're going to let your legacy in, you know. And I think it's very dangerous because we are arriving at a time where, for instance, Google says us that on a highway, we're going to need 7 times less space to run the same number of cars, given automotive car. You can put 7 times more cars on the same line than before if you have all automated car. You know, so same thing for the use of building. You know, traditional building, a office building is used 27% of the time. If you put intelligence in it, if you bring some nice apps, you may double that. And precisely that would lead to completely change the way you see I would say the management of the future of the city. So it's obviously about technology, but not only about technology. It's a lot about trying to understand the new paradigm of these cities. And I would say it's probably a complete holistic change. You need to envision things in a very different manner. The first thing I believe is important to have in mind is the notion of flattenization of the world. You know, it's not one to many, it's much more many to many. Think about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is better than Britannica as an encyclopedia, and it was made by everyone. You know, so the science of experts is still there, but it's probably relatively less important than in the past. And it's the same thing for governing different bodies, whether corporation or cities in general. So we go from something which is very hierarchic, very vertical, with information systems that are separated from one to another, and therefore not very efficient to run, to something which is quite different, which would probably resemble this, you know, something where you remove a lot of hierarchy, and you bring in a lot of platform, a lot of IT systems that synchronizes all the people in it, and therefore let us be much more agile, much more efficient, much more project-driven in general. This works for any type of organization at large. And it's basically the idea that's been rumored around a lot. It's the notion of transforming cities a lot into platforms. I mean, obviously, technical platforms, data lake, APIs, things you already know, but also platform, I would say, human platforms, letting people interact more easily in different manners to bring in different style of innovation into the city. And this is a very big challenge because we don't have really the skill set, the education to manage this type of, this new form of organization in general. So the thing which I believe is the most important, whether you're in corporation or in metropole, is to understand the demographics. You know, it's a lot more about culture than about technology. So it may sound weird because we are all plugged into technology, but at the end of the day, if something doesn't work, you may see that it's a lot about the people, I would say the basic reaction that would have because of their background than about the technology in itself. So you need to understand that if you are in Lagos, in Palo Alto, in Barcelona, or in Paris, you have very different demographics. And the first thing you need to understand is what are the needs of these demographics, these sociodemographics in general. And because you need to engage these people, and the start is much more difficult than the second step. The first step is the highest in general. And by the way, you will understand that, for instance, in Lagos, the average age of the city users is 19 versus in Palo Alto it's 44. It would completely change the type of services you could bring to these people, and more the type of things that would interest these people to be engaged in. A few things to do to make this happen. The first thing I believe, which is actually a technical thing, is important, is to think broadly openness. So obviously open data is one thing, but it's been so much, I would say, repeated to anyone that I think it's clear enough for everyone that we need to be open data. But probably a thing which is, to me, important as well is open source. And open source is kind of a challenge because you need to have expertise in your team to manage it. It's more complicated than black box that works, at least when you install it. You know, but when you do that, maybe you do it a little bit for you, but you do it a lot for the ecosystem, for the community, and for your legacy. Because it's much more easy to audit, it's much more easy to share, it's more easy to document, and I think it should be almost mandatory for cities to think open source before all. The second notion, which is different, is the notion of dancing with elephants. You know, disruptive innovation is becoming the norm, and the innovation you're dealing with most of the time is incremental innovation. So it's a different mindset, and if you are an innovator coming from outside of the system, most of the time it will be extremely difficult for you to interface easily with I would say, the current traditional body. And therefore, you need to have dedicated teams to do that. People who understand the need of startups, who can help them to navigate throughout complex organization, and who can talk the same language to these people. You know, The second thing which I think is really important is think broadly design, what we call total design. Don't think about bringing an app or bringing an API or bringing a given service. Think about the entire ecosystem, how it would influence people to bring like a new type of transportation, smart transportation into the city. And you will understand that the experience people are going through, it's much more diverse, much more complex than what you expected before. And I think it's something which is easier given of the flow of data that are coming through us. You know, we are probably more equipped than we've never been to understand what it's about than before. So the notion of designing experience is really key. And the third thing is don't try to put innovation at the core of your current system. It won't work. The thing is, if you try to do that, what will happen is you will put the innovation at the core, and the anti-cores, the people who don't like your innovation, who believe it's threatening them, will do everything they can to kill it. You know, they will send some bad vibes until they kill it, definitely. And the only thing that I've seen in 120 different organizations that works, it's basically to isolate a lab apart from the big, I would say, ecosystem, and to bring in the people who are innovators. You bring in these people, and they will progressively grow an innovation which is a disruptive innovation, most of the time competing with the core system. And when it's big enough, when you believe that it's sustainable, you can start to exchange people from your traditional body into your innovative lab, and therefore to convert these people into innovators. It's the only way to make it work. If you want to change your organization, you can't do it from the inside. You need to have 1, 2, 10, 20, 100 different small labs where people can express their disruptive skills. That's one of the most important advice I would give you. The thing also, it's about these labs, it's to make sure that it's platforms, meaning that it's a place where people can exchange ideas. You know, so you need to take care about the place to make sure that it's a place where you can really bump into people with whom you have different skill sets, and the addition of your skill set with the skill set of these people will eventually create innovation. And the most difficult thing you have to fight with is the fear of what is unknown, what is new. The sentence, it won't work. You know, this is very common. So you need to create a culture of accepting innovation and accepting failure as well. Accepting that it won't work. And to make it happen, you need to make it small, make it fast, fail fast, and when it works, scale up big. That's really important as well. And you need to be time constrained as well. You don't have time for innovation. The more you shorten the time for innovation, the more disruptive it becomes. So it's better to, in the same period of time, to do it 3 times in different manners and to have 2 failures than to expect that in the long run it will eventually work. It's not the way it's best. The thing also you need to make sure it's to have people coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences. And by confronting these people, not only will you make your city a better place, but also you will probably bring in much more innovation at large. What we see in a traditional organization is something that looks like this. You know, people having all the same background, or most of the time the same time of background, and information systems that are extremely complex, extremely heterogeneous, and therefore it's difficult to let these people communicate in between them. And I think the organization of the future would look much more than this. Very homogeneous tools to communicate, to let these people interact in between them, and very diverse background from these people. It's proven, I mean, it's scientifically proven that you bring in much more disruptive innovation if you adopt this type of approach. So this was a few ideas. Obviously, it's much more complex to bringing innovation. But I think, to me, the most interesting, it's the complete sea change in terms of governance of large organizations such as cities that should happen anytime soon. I mean, we can't grow in terms of infrastructure because we have environmental constraints, basically. We have energetical constraints. We can't use more energy and so on. So we need to be smarter. And to be smarter, we need to be able to better use what we have to create what we call opportunity gain. And that's probably I would say, the most difficult mindset change that we have to ask to the people who are in charge of our cities in general. And to me, it could be, on the long run, what I would call the definition of smart cities, a city that is agile, that is disruptive, and that is trying to create innovation from anyone. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gilles. We've got time for a couple of questions from the floor. Has anyone got anything they'd like to ask? Yes, the gentleman over there. Would you like to just head to the mic? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for a fascinating talk. Very inspiring. And I'd like to ask you to highlight the issue of how startups are actually accessing the cities, because innovation, more and more cities are actually creating innovation labs, as you said. But for a startup with limited resources coming to every city and then having to go through an innovation lab, it's a very tedious and dangerous process without having the resources.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, as I said, the first thing you need to have as a city is an interface to talk to the startups. People who understand API, who understand what you're trying to do, and who would probably help you to deal with the regulation. I would say, whether it's official or unofficial regulation, you have a lot of people ready to try to kill what you do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to have, I would say, standardized processes, to measure. For instance, the culture of KPI is really important, because a lot of time you try something and you can't even tell for yourself whether it works or doesn't work. So you need to define before the experimentation what would be the success, whether it would be financial, whether it be like the engagement of people or whatever. You need to define with a startup what is the success. And you need also to think about the next step, because when you start to have I would say, a commercial discussion, a business discussion, because it's a success, it's completely different than if you did it or tried to do it before that you started the experimentation.
Thank you. One more question from the floor? Well, I would like to just finish off with one question, asking, if people wanted to go and find these labs or create these labs, what would be almost the first step in making that happen?
You need to make sure that you can reach a critical size. I mean, if it's an external lab, a lab that's not for the inside only, which I believe is important, you need to make sure that you won't have all the same type of startups. Having transportation startup, only a silo of transportation startup is dangerous, because you won't bring in some disruptive innovation. What is interesting, what I see a lot, is the startup that works on, let's say, transportation, talking with a startup that works on the energy, for instance. And I think that even though you won't necessarily create some partnership in between those two, you will enlarge the understanding from your civil servant of what is innovation. So you need to have something which is kind of broad in terms of the type of expertise you would find in your lab.
That cross-fertilization of ideas, where the magic happens. Thank you very much. Gilles Babinet, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You just...
Yep.